Hey Boxers, in this video we're going to take a look at some more smart assets that BuildBox has for us. In this video we're going to check out lanes and swipe 3 lanes. So I'm going to go ahead and start by just clicking on the flap template here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete some of the objects from the different scenes and kind of clean things up. So I'm going to go into my 3D world here and I'm going to zoom out a little bit on my first scene. So this is the start scene. And then we've got a couple platforms and enemies here that I'm just going to delete real quick for this example. So I'm going to delete these platforms as well. And it's as easy as just selecting them and deleting them using your delete button. Also, you can hit the space bar on your keyboard and move around your scene like this, and that really helps for moving and looking at different things in your scene. Okay, so let's go over here to our asset library, and then I'm going to go over here to assets, and then we're going to select lanes. And then you can either double click lanes and it'll add to your library automatically, or you can go over here to the add to library button and add it that way as well. Since I'm going to be showing you both lanes and swipe 3 lanes, I'm going to go ahead and I will select the asset here, and then I'll click add to library as well, so we've got them both in our objects menu, and now we can go into our 3D world and use them. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and just start off by looking at lanes. So I'll select my character here and I'm going to delete them, and I'm going to move my lanes up, and that's going to be the main character for this example. You don't always have to do it this way, but for this one it's going to be an actor or a character, whichever way you want to say it. So, okay, let's take a look now at what we're doing. So we've got our scene here, and you can see that our scene starts off here because we have a cube, a square here, and then if you rotate around and you look, you can see that there's a pyramidal object over here, and this is pointing to the direction of your scene. So right now, the way it's set up with our triangle pointing towards the scene, that looks good. That's what we want. So now let's go ahead and just preview it and see what we're working with right now. So I'm going to go ahead and press preview. And then I have this in debug mode so that you can clearly see what's going on. So right now, all you have to do is just tap the screen and the character is going to switch lanes. So it's going to switch back and forth between those 2 specific lanes. And let me show you why that is. So I'm going to exit out of my preview right now. And then let's go ahead and double click on our actor here. And these are the nodes that are going on behind the scenes behind this lane switching smart asset. So the lane move node first checks to see if the object or the actor is actually in a scene or in a 3D world, and then as long as that's enabled, then it's going to go ahead and take effect. So the other thing that's being triggered here is the switch between the A and the B. You can see here that when you touch the screen, it's going to switch between a lane move that offsets it by 2 and then a lane move that offsets it by -2. And that's what creates the movement, the side-to-side movement that you see in our scene. So let me go ahead and I'm going to double click on my lane move here so we can see the code that's going on behind the scenes. So we've got a couple variables. First, you can see that the enabled is set to false, and it checks to see if it's within the scene, and as long as if it's enabled, then it's going to go ahead and act out this position move. And the set position is really what's making it move, and it's moving by this offset variable which you have set over here, and you fill in the text box. So whatever number you put in here for the offset, that's how much it's going to move when you do your lane switch. It's the same thing, it's the identical thing right here. However, the offset variable is set to -2, and that's the only difference. And that's what makes it move back and forth, back and forth. So let's go ahead and take one last look at it in the scene so you can see the kind of movement from behind the character. So I positioned the camera a little bit more behind the character. So now let's go ahead and preview it and see what we're working with. Okay, great. So you can see that is initially, and watch this right off the bat, okay? As soon as the preview starts, it goes ahead and it checks to see, is it enabled? All right, great, then it's going to switch the position. And that's the first lane move that happens. Then every single time you touch the screen, then it's going to do an offset of -2, then an offset of 2, offset of -2. And looking at it from the debug mode is just kind of useful. You can see the path line here as well. I can go ahead and take off debug and hit preview again, and I can hit preview again, and you can see the movement there. But it's a little bit harder to see. It's nicer to have debug mode on so you can see the line and the offset that's happening within the scenes. So that is just a regular lane switch. Now let's go ahead and check out swiping 3 lanes. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this actor out of the scene. I'm going to go ahead and take it off of rotation. I'll delete it real fast. I'm going to drop in swipe 3 lanes in here as an actor, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll move this back down. For right now, it doesn't really matter. It can stay in the characters menu. It doesn't matter. For right now, let's go ahead and I'll drag in this 3 lanes character, and it's a little bit big for this demonstration, so I'm going to go over here to scale, and I'm just going to scale it down 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5, and that's going to just make it half the size it is now. Okay, perfect. That's way more reasonable. We can go ahead and work with this. Okay, so this is a really similar setup, and I've got the camera here behind it as well. So it's going to have a similar setup as the switch lanes, but it's going to be 3 lanes, and instead of touch controls, it's going to have swiping controls. And let me just quickly preview it for you right now. So here's our main path down the line. This is where our path is for our scene. And if I swipe right, it jumps and hops and it moves over to the right lane. If I swipe over to the left, it gets recentered and moves back to that center lane. And if I swipe left again, it stays over here on the left lane. And if I try to swipe left again and try to keep pushing, it's not going to go anywhere. So it's locked in to these 3 lanes, and it works really, really nicely. It's a great type of setup for a game like Subway Surfers or some sort of lane game that we see sometimes in the App Store. So I think this is a great smart asset for you to use. And let's take a closer look at what's happening with the code behind the scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double click on our 3-lane swipe here, and let's take a look at what's happening with these nodes. Okay, so this is really where the magic happens. You've seen lane move here before. You've seen that it has an offset set up, and this one has an offset of -4. This one's going to probably have an offset of 4, and then you also have speed. I don't know if I mentioned that with the other lane move node before in the other example, but you can also calculate and adjust the speed here as well. Now, this is really where the magic happens, in this swipe 3 lane node here, and let's take a look at the code because this is really cool. Okay, so the main function here, the real kicker, is this move switch, and this is where it has a lot of the logic behind it. So you'll notice that there's 3 states. There's the state 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so this is state 0, this is state 1, and state 2. State 1 is that middle lane. Right? This is where the emit signal B, B is essentially the middle lane, the lane that you start off with, and that one is set to true. If you move over to the left, it's going to be state 0, and it's going to make lane A be true, and so that's where it's going to switch over to. And if you try to go past lane 2, or if you try to go below lane 0, it's got some if statements that are conditionals to prevent that from happening. So for instance, if you try to go greater than state 2, it just makes state 2 equal to 2. Or if you try to make the state be less than 0, then it just makes the state equal to 0, and you end up staying in the same lane. Okay, and then so that's kind of like the logic behind the scenes. Now this is what's happening when you're touching the screen in the touch, you're swiping. Okay, this is what's happening there. So if it's going to register your touch point, it's going to see your movement and check if it's switched, and if so, if you move it a certain distance either to the left or to the right, depending on where your start point is and which direction you move, it's either going to make the move switch function happen here. This is the move switch function. It's going to make move switch happen, and it's either going to give it a value, it's going to pass in a value of 1 or -1, which is either going to increase the state by 1 or decrease the state by 1, and then of course it's got preventative if statements if you try to go past 2 or below 0. So this is really cool. I would definitely check out the code here a little bit more and get a closer look at what's going on here with the logic behind swipe 3 lanes. You can potentially add more lanes if you like, and so there's really no limitation here. You can make little adjustments to this one, and it's super cool. And one other little thing I want to show you that I thought was pretty neat was Nick added a jump animation to the lane movements. So instead of it just jumping and kind of abruptly switching over, it has a real nice little jump animation that happens when you're switching the lanes. So every single time, and it's hooked up to all 3 lanes, So every single time you try to switch lane, it's going to make a jump animation happen. This happens even if you're in the leftmost lane or the rightmost lane and you try to continue to move left or right. So here's what I mean. I'll go ahead and I'll show you a preview so you can understand. So let's say I'm trying to move to the left, and then I try to move to the left again. Well, it's going to play the jump animation again. It's going to play it every single time, even though I don't move lanes. Because right now, if I'm trying to move to state 0, or I'm actually trying to move to state -1, it prevents me from doing that because it has this if statement that says, if you try to go below 0, then it makes the state just be equal to 0, and then you're right back in the same lane that you were in, but it still plays that jump animation. So anyways, I thought that was really cool. I wanted to give you a quick look at these 2 smart assets that have been added. There's going to be tons and tons more smart assets going to be added as the weeks and the months go by, and the community is going to start building these as well and start sharing them with each other. It's going to be really, really awesome. I can't wait to see what you all build with that, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Keep an eye out for some more videos that are going to be coming in the following weeks. We're going to be releasing a lot more information about BuildBox 3. All right, boxers, have a good one and keep on boxing.